Well, hello, Nativity Bible heads. It is Dr. Wayne coming at you with your Sunday morning Power Bible Study. How is everybody doing? You know, we finally got there. We finally got to chapter 20 of Exodus. Everybody knows. Yes, you do. Yeah, right? When you watch the movie, I know you had the Bible right next to you. I know I did. And it was right there. Moses, Charlton Heston is on the mountain, and he goes up, and there's all kinds of sound and fury, and he comes down with these tablets. And anyway, that voice of God, by the way, that was, I think that was the one. There were two different times that God's voice was used in that movie. One was on the burning bush thing, and the other was at the commandments. And I think the commandments were actually just a modulation of Charlton Heston's own voice. I think that's what I heard. It's either that or it was actually Cecil B. DeMille's voice. I can't remember now. Yeah, Google it, Wikipedia. Yeah. Anyway. Last week, so the context of all of the commandments is that God is leading them from slavery to a new land that they do not know. The wilderness time is a time of winnowing, if you will, and it is a place that challenges them. Up to this point, though, they haven't really gotten any guidance other than just spot things of Moses, of like, oh, they don't have food. How are we going to get them food? God manages to get them food. Oh, they don't have water. How are we going to get them water? God manages to get them water. This chapter looks forward to a time when they are not nomadic anymore, when they're actually a settled people. And we've got to get that because if you consider the way the narrative was, they used to be a settled people back in Egypt. They knew what it was like to be a settled people. They're not a settled people now, but they're going to be a settled people again. So it's like, okay, let's get this in now. I'm thinking like from God's perspective, okay, let's get this in now so that we don't have to worry about them thinking, I wonder how we should make our laws. That kind of thing. Here it is, all on the mount. Then God, we're in chapter 20, verse 1. Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Some people take those two verses as constituting a commandment. In the different traditions enumerate the commandments in different ways. And the Jewish tradition takes the self-identification, the divine self-identification of like, oh, just to make sure you know who you're dealing with here, what God is speaking to you? Well, that God that just saved your sorry butts from slavery? Yeah, that's me. That's who's talking right now. So in case you wanted to, you might want to tune in on what I'm saying, I'm that guy. I'm that God, okay? That's kind of like what's going on. The Protestant traditions, the Eastern Orthodox, the Anglican, most Protestant churches only take that to be just prologue. We call that just prologue. It's like, oh, that's prologue. No commandment, just prologue. The Roman Catholic and the Lutheran churches, though, agree with the Jewish perspective, and they take that as a part of the first commandment, but for them, the first commandment rolls into what the Eastern Orthodox, Anglican, and most Protestant churches consider the first commandment, which is verse 3. Thou shalt not. Yeah, you shall have no other gods before me. I think it's. I think we've got it. I think we got it right. The mainline Protestantism. I think we got it right. And that the thing about it's all about about what is it that, who is it that they're going to venerate for their freedom? Who is it that, like, God is basically saying, hey, I've done something really magnificent for you, and you know what? I think I've deserved a place of supremacy in your, your worship. You're not going to find any other God that did that for you. I'm that God. It's almost, there's this theme. One of the themes that we have in Scripture, and we'll see this later on more about Yahweh being a jealous God. We've heard that expression with regard to God. The idea being like this God of creation, the God that's created the universe, the God that created them, the God that liberated them, is really the only God that's worthwhile of being held to even exist. Some people talk about well, you should have no other gods before me, as an implicit admission that other gods exist. Now, I don't know that it necessarily does that so much as it does recognize that one of the things that we do, one of the ways of human being, the way humans be, the way humans are, is that we do make things into gods. And we do make things into gods that we don't realize it maybe at the time that we're doing it, but it ends up taking preeminence over our true God, the one who saves us, the one who liberates us, the one that has a safe promised land for us all. That's the way that should go, right? So when we start verse 4, we get into the thing about idols. Now, look at this. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Oh, there's the jealous God thing. Punishing children for the iniquity of parents. We can't get into that. We can't get into that one right now. To the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. So, those verses, everything that we've read so far, verses 1 through 6, in the Roman Catholic and the Lutheran churches, that's all the first commandment. And you can kind of make an argument for that. The thing about about you shall not make for yourself an idol is like a subcategory under you shall not have any of the gods before me. We in the mainline Protestant tradition take that thing about idols as its own commandment. And that is the way we do that. The Jewish tradition takes that commandment of the idols with the thing about you should not have any other gods as the same thing. So anyway, we need to move on. Commandment number 3 starts in Exodus 20, verse 7. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. What is that about? Okay. This command is all about the divine reputation. Remember how this God identified himself at the beginning. I am the Lord. That's when he says I am the Lord in verse 2, that's the covenant name, the one that was given to Moses at the burning bush. I am the Lord, Yahweh. That's the tetragrammaton, that 4 consonants that we think sounds like Yahweh. We don't know for sure because they never said it. What they said was the word for Lord, which was Adonai, but we get it translated as Lord with capital letters, so that's how we know it's the divine name. And the Lord your God, yeah, the one who brought you out of Egypt. Well, guess what? don't you be go, this is my name. Don't you be go doing this in my name. My name is, back then, one of the popular things to do when you had a god, okay, oh, my God can beat up your God, is to invoke the name of their God in a way of like cursing somebody or of doing something mean. The way that comes to fruition for us is when we misappropriate stuff that's happening in the world with something that's God. It's really disturbing. There's this. You don't hear me talk about this a lot, but it's very difficult to talk about because so many people get so bent out of shape about it. But it's called civil religion. Civil religion is the acceptance of the use of a religion to tame a people for political ends. And when political parties use God as, oh, well, we've got God on our side, you don't. You guys are against God. We're for God, you're against God. That's, yeah. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God. Okay, wrongful use is saying, oh, we've got God, you don't. And our God will smite you, and you're bad if you don't identify with us. That's misuse of the name of the Lord. That is I believe, falls inside what this commandment speaks to. And does it happen in today's world? Yes, it does. And it's sad. It is very, very sad. I can't go into it much more than that. But inside of, if you notice all of these commandments so far, the only two commandments, three, if you two in the Roman Catholic and Lutheran tradition, but three commandments in our tradition and the Jewish tradition. It all has to do with, okay, we really got to get that our God is not a toy. Our God is not something that's contained in a box. Our God is not something that can be contained in an idol, that can be represented by a thing. That's the thing about the idols. It's like the idea that these first three commandments are trying to get across is that really you're dealing with the creator of the universe here, okay? Don't take that lightly. Don't you dare think that that gives you some sort of privilege. Don't think that that gives you some sort of magical power. Don't get all uppity about this. Don't bother trying to put your God in the same category of everybody else by representing it with an idol. This is the gist of the first three commandments. All right. The fourth commandment comes in verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Okay. I know when you grow up, that gets interpreted as, all right, well, you gotta go to church on Sunday. If you're not going to church, don't be desecrating the Sabbath. By working on Sunday, you gotta go to church on Sunday. No, that's not what this is talking about. Sabbath is not even Sunday. The Sabbath, the word means seventh. To honor the Sabbath, to remember the Sabbath, it means to not forget that, that's right. Our God is the God of creation. How was it for our God? Our God created, 6 days. Seventh day, what? No work. Rest. The idea is our God put into motion a cycle of rest after work. Work, rest. Work, rest. Work, rest. That kind of thing. So this is for our well-being. This is also for us to get that we want to be in tune with. This is a way of getting us in tune with the created order. How did God create the world? I just said it. Work, rest. And when we abide by that, we're going to actually find ourselves creative as well. We all know all work and no play makes you a dull person, right? There you go. We know this. That's the reason why some people have talked about how we have a leisure ethic now of like, oh, it's important to have time off. Well, guess what? That's not some new age thing that got invented. Let's remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Now, if you do work, and then rest, obviously, when you have that day of rest, what does that make available? What kind of an opportunity does that create? Yeah, that's where worship comes in. Now, that doesn't mean we don't worship on a day in, day out basis, or that we can't pray or whatever on days we're working. But I'm just trying to make the point that this isn't, the emphasis here isn't you gotta go to church if you're gonna keep the Sabbath holy. No, that's not it. You go to church for a whole lot of different reasons, a lot better reasons. Oh, by the way, you remember those old blue laws back in the, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s even, right? The blue laws. What were the blue laws? The blue laws were laws in states that prohibited businesses from opening on Sundays. Do you remember that? I remember that. They were called the blue laws. And the rationale, of course, was, well, you gotta remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So therefore, people can't be open. No business is open. Well, guess what? Sunday ain't the Sabbath. No, never was, never will be. Do you remember there was a book? That was popular. I don't know if it was written in the 60s or not, but it was by a writer called Hal Lindsey, The Late Great Planet Earth. And it's some sort of, it's horrible biblical scholarship. But it's one of those books that is alarmist, and it tries to interpret things that were happening back in the 60s and the 70s as like, oh, these are the signs of the end times. And one of the things that it mentions, oh, and this was a big deal, one of its big points in the whole book was this: Sunday is not the real Sabbath. And blue laws that protect the false Sabbath of Sunday, those are the mark of the beast. This is what people were saying. No, that's what Hal Lindsey was saying in his book. The blue laws were the mark of the laws that protected this false Sabbath. That was evidence for that scourge of the 666 beast and all of that. It's stupid, but it just goes to show you where people's imaginations will take them with regard to the Bible. I don't think that we need to go there on this one, right? All right, we're in verse 9 now. Verse 9 is going to give us, oh, wait a second. No, there's a rationale. 9, 10, and 11. 6 days you shall labor at all your work, but the seventh day is Sabbath, the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you or your son, your daughter, your male, female slave, your livestock, your alien resident in your towns. For in the 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. So that's the whole rationale behind the remembering the seventh day, the Sabbath, which is Saturday. And I wish Saturday was my day of rest. It's not. I work more on Saturday than any other day of the week. This is not the idea. What this commandment is doing is trying to give us, it gives us a picture, of the overall cycle of work, rest. But it also gives us a picture of the promise of what is to come. When we talk about the hereafter, when we talk about eternity, when we talk about after dying, what happens, we talk about that as entering into eternal what? Rest. Yeah. It's like the cycle of creation. That's the cycle of creation. That's the cycle of life. That's one of the reasons why I think I think reincarnation is silly. Reincarnation is silly. Like, oh yeah, you came back as a this or that. No, the Bible, I believe, teaches that it goes one way, and that is after all of this work of our terrestrial days is over, what do we have to look forward to? Yeah, rest. Rest. Eternal rest. Can you think of anything better than eternal rest? This is what I believe is being proleptically commanded in this, to remember the Sabbath day. You are actually practicing not just good health here, but you're practicing for the hereafter, because that's what the hereafter is about. It's about rest from the work of being here. Okay, there you go. All right, on to the next commandment, which is in verse 12. It is the fifth commandment in our Protestant enumeration, as well as the Jewish one. It's only the fourth commandment with regard to the Roman Catholic and Lutheran. You know what they do, the Roman Catholics and Lutherans? They divide the last commandment about coveting. They divide it into two different. One commandment, ninth commandment, is coveting against one thing, and the other one is coveting. So in case you were wondering, well, how can they have this one about the parents be the fourth commandment and it's the fifth one for us? Well, that's because they divide what we call the last commandment into two. All right? All right. So, verse 12, what does it say? Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Very much of a Deuteronomistic kind of a thing here. We have that language a lot in Deuteronomy. That's why we call it Deuteronomistic language. Okay, this is not something that, this is a commandment that is not addressing, it's not saying, this isn't addressing kids, okay? Let's just flat out say it. It's not talking about, kids, do what your parents tell you. No, that's not what it's talking about. Now, I'm not saying that kids shouldn't do what parents tell them. They probably should do it most of the time, but who knows? There's not all parents are good out there, right? What does it mean? What is this? This is talking about adults. How do you honor your father and mother after you become an adult? I have I have a huge explanation under why I believe that's the most pertinent use of this. But if you think about it, what value did the elderly have back then? They were considered a burden. They were considered, the trash heap. They're not useful anymore. They just get sick and they die and they're just a drain and all of that. That's the way the society thought of the elderly, and they had no rights and people were not necessarily good to. Same way with kids. Think about it. You don't see anything in these commandments that say, make sure you don't abuse your kids. Thou shalt not abuse your kids. Where is that in the Ten Commandments, right? Well, that's because the Ten Commandments are addressing the way life was known at that time. There was a lot of dishonoring of the elderly. Maybe that's the case today. But what this does do is give you an idea of the fact that these commandments are casting a wide net. They're like setting, they're not just being picky about, oh, don't do this, 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 and this. What it's doing is it's setting an outer limit. It's setting a boundary. You know, it's like that fence in baseball, or I don't know, that berm that keeps the floodwaters from coming into your lawn or whatever. It's a boundary, the outer limits of which, and is there room to create inside those outer limits, those outer boundaries? Yeah. These commandments aren't intended to be taken as like, oh, it didn't say I couldn't abuse my kids, so I can abuse. No, we're supposed to create life in a way that's orderly and honors our Creator inside of these barriers, okay? All right, now, here's your barriers. Here's your barriers. We're going to get into those barriers with what we like to call the thou shalt nots. Have you heard of thou shalt not yet? No, you have not. You've heard to remember to do this, or, well, we did say you will not make wrongful use. We did hear that. You won't make for yourself an idol. But with regard to each other, that's what comes up next. So the thing about honoring father and mother, the stuff that comes after this is almost like, it kind of like fills that out a little bit more if you think about it. Look at verse 13. You shall not murder. The verb means kill. It gets translated as murder because when Bibles use the word kill, people will say, well, wait a second. There's a whole lot of killing in the Bible. Whole lot of righteous killing. Whole lot of kings doing killing. Whole lot of righteous people doing killing. Whole lot of God doing killing. Moses does some killing. There's a whole lot of killing that happens to take the promised land. So that's the reason why a lot of scholars will avoid that by translating the word as murder. And, oh yeah, well, murder, okay. Killing is one thing. Murder, oh yeah, what is that? Well, we all have that idea. But the Hebrew word doesn't really make that distinction. That's our distinction. The word kill, like I told you, these are outer boundaries, outer limits to behavior that we are supposed to create something inside of that works for us, right? The idea here is this. Life belonged to God. God gave life, God takes it away. For anybody to kill anybody for any reason was to step in as God. There's a thing called blood guilt, a thing about blood that could be avenged. And all of that stems from the fact that blood, life, that was all the province of God. So to end one's life means what you're doing is you're taking the place of God. And I guess what one must ask is, are you good with that? We all know that killing happens. And I don't know anybody that's so pacifistic that can't find some circumstance where some killing is necessary, right? Now, there you go. Why wouldn't we want to see this as an outer limit inside of which we have a lot of room to create what it is that works for us? All right? Gotta go on. Gotta go on. There you go. Verse 14. Now we're going to get specific. Oh, thou shalt not commit adultery. You shall not commit adultery. Now, again, you got to remember, these commandments are not necessarily being addressed to everyone, because this thing about adultery meant one very specific thing. Well, okay, in regards to married men, you know it's impossible for a single man to commit adultery unless he was with a married woman. A married man is not committing adultery unless he, strips another man's wife. Yeah, stripping of other women are okay. That's actually the way that was back then. A woman, an unmarried woman, she could commit adultery if she was having sex with any married man. A married woman having sex with any man, that's adultery. This is the thing about adultery. It's not a level playing field, if you will. That's just the way that was back then. What's the principle of the you shall not commit adultery? The principle of the you shall not commit adultery is, you know what? You really ought to be good with your word. Those promises that you make with regard to other people, you know what? If you go back on those promises, you know what? It could hurt some people. It could hurt your life. It could hurt your relationship. It could hurt your future. And here's one of the things that we know later on at a very practical level, especially in Israel. If you're not staying faithful to who you're married to, and that includes betrothals, how do we determine who gets to inherit the land? We gotta know who the inheritance goes to. If you don't know who, and you can't know who the inheritance goes to if you're stripping all these people and producing babies around, and it's like, oh, he's my daddy, and you're like, who's your daddy, right? It was important that they know who's the rightful heir. Guess what? If you're not committing adultery, you don't have that problem. This is actually part of the major concern that underlies this. Sweetness. Verse 15. Verse 15 is what? This is the 8th commandment in our enumeration, Jewish and mainline Protestantism. You shall not steal. And again, you really got to get, there's a whole lot of things you shouldn't do even before stealing. So you shall not steal puts an outer boundary, if you will, on behavior. And that is this: people's goods and the things that they own were considered to be a part of them. It's like, so if to steal meant to really take something of somebody else's being, it's a violation of their being because their possessions were considered to be a part of their personhood. It's all about honor. Thou shalt not steal. Verse 16. Verse 16 is the 9th commandment. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Bearing false witness against your neighbor. Now, the way this was, the context out of which this came is talking about perjuring yourself. It's talking about swearing an oath to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so right, all of that. And oh, yeah, because you do that, you shouldn't lie about your neighbor. Well, guess what? Yeah, no, you shouldn't do that. There's a whole lot of things we shouldn't do with regard to our neighbor. Bearing false witness, witness doesn't necessarily, in a broader thing, okay, it started as a legal thing. But think about it in terms of our conversation. Think about it in terms of our witness. Okay, you meet somebody and you have an impression of that somebody, and you're talking with somebody else about, and that somebody comes up, and you, by expressing an opinion about that person, are bearing witness. You're bearing witness about that person. And if you are intentionally trying to paint the way you want somebody else to see that person the way you saw them, that's bearing false witness. There's another word for that. Too bad that they didn't have this word back in Moses' day. Thou shalt not gossip. Oh boy. Ooh, that'd shut a whole lot of conversation up, wouldn't it? Gossip. Just repeating something somebody else said. Oh, people are saying this. Oh, a lot of people are saying this. People are saying that. Have you heard? Have you heard that? Yeah. Bearing false witness. It can destroy a person's listening. It creates a false narrative that never can get corrected because the people who are doing it are so blind about how is that bearing false witness? I don't understand. All I'm doing is expressing my opinion. Yeah, bearing false witness. Anything that seeks to pull down another in another's listening is bearing false witness. Gossip, I believe, is included in that. We have our last commandment coming up here. Look, verse 17, like I told you, it is the 10th commandment in the Jewish and the mainline Protestant tradition, but it's divided into two of them in the Roman Catholic and Lutheran tradition. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, period, okay? And then the other is, and then the second one is, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. We all have, that's just a 10th commandment of not coveting. The Lutherans and the Roman Catholics see that coveting your neighbor's house is one thing, and then coveting your neighbor's wife and possessions or something. So, yeah, this is one of those commandments that teaches us the context of like, oh wow, this is it. This is being directed mostly towards men, is it not? It is, right? Shall not covet your neighbor's house. Women don't have to covet somebody else's house because they just live in the one that the guy gave them or the guy provides. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Didn't say anything about coveting your neighbor's husband, right? So, one of the things we got to get here is that this is an example of setting an outer boundary. One of the things that I think we should notice with this 10th commandment about not coveting is that it moves in the direction of what Jesus eventually does in his Sermon on the Mount. Think about it. He talks about like, oh, you've heard it said, but I say, and he would take the commandments of, like he would say, oh, Jesus actually said this in the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard it said, you should not covet. But I say, if you even look upon another woman or something with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery, kind of a thing, right? What is Jesus doing there? He is just filling out. He's not adding anything. He's just filling out. You know how the 10th commandment, the last commandment about coveting. Guess what? That's where all of this is supposed to go. It's not just about what do you physically do? Did you physically kill that person? Did you actually did you slay somebody? Did you physically bear false witness? Did you even the intention of doing that is like I said, these are the outer limits of it. We're supposed to be creative inside those limits that tell us what's good and not good behavior. The fact that the last commandment goes into the direction of just what's going on in the mind, you realize that? Do you realize that? That it's actually going, this is with regard to the part of the commandments that are talking about our interpersonal relationships, We're going toward that space of the mind. That's what Jesus does in the Sermon on the Mount. It's one of the reasons why we see Jesus as being seen by the early church community as like, oh, he's basically just filled out what Moses already started. Not changing it, not putting away any of the commands, just getting down to, okay, well, what was this commandment really about? That's what Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount is all about. That's all the time we have for all of this today. But I hope that you get that the Ten Commandments are not an icon in and of themselves. I think it is horrible. It is horrible when people try to make the Ten Commandments into I've seen this in the news, states are like, oh, I want a monument to the Ten Commandments put up in the town square. Why? Oh, well, we believe that people should behave a certain way and we just want to make them. No, that's not what you want to do. You want to show off. You know, we don't honor God by making a monument or an icon out of the word. It just isn't the case. The Ten Commandments are intended, like I said, to create a space of like outer limits, and it gives us room to reevaluate our own behavior. We're not supposed to use it to judge others. Does it get used to judge others? Yes, especially when it gets codified in laws. But as far as our personal experience in life and our personal relationships with other people, we are supposed to be using it to make ourselves a better person, to be a contributing member of society. These commandments are meant to protect society on a whole. I don't think that we honor the intention when we turn it into a political thing of like, oh, we got to post a monument of it. No, we don't. Here's what we need to do. We need to read it and we need to study it, and then we need to read Matthew and read the New Testament and find, well, what did Jesus do with this? That's what invites us into the truth of it. That's what invites us into the efficacy of it. Anything else is just showboating and play acting and hypocritical. The true work of transformation is when we are actually engaged in the game of figuring out more and more and fine-tuning more and more. How can I be more honoring towards other people? How can I do that? How can I express love? How can I do that? This is what the Ten Commandments make possible. That's it, folks. I had no idea I was going to go 43 minutes on this today, but I did. But I thought it was a good one. Let me know if you thought it was a good one. Put it in the comments there. Let's see what you thought. Was that a good one? Anyway, blessings on your day, everyone.